Part 20. Man at the Top of the Food Chain. Author, Xionglang Guo. Chapter 191. The sound of a fighter jet cutting through the sky rang out in Tianjin City. Li Anping flew directly into Tianjin. Naturally, no one dared to stop him wherever he passed. Even many ordinary citizens cheered when they saw the airwaves passing through the sky. Obviously, under the packaging of professionals during this period, Li Anping's image was very positive in the eyes of ordinary people. Relying on his superpowers to catch criminals, fight against evil forces, and fight against foreign hostile organizations. Even because Li Anping was in charge of Tianjin, there was a zero crime rate here. He also saved many accidents such as car accidents and fires. With the positive publicity of all the media, he has become the embodiment of justice in the eyes of ordinary people. Slowing down a little, waving to the cheering crowd on the ground, Li Anping accelerated again and flew towards the imperial city. Although he did not take those waving citizens to heart, Li Anping would still make some amiable and approachable images. After all, this is also part of the publicity work. As soon as he landed on a helipad in the palace, someone led Li Anping to the dressing room to change clothes. After all, he was wearing a tight combat uniform, which was not suitable for meeting the Star Alliance envoy. In the dressing room, in addition to several cute maids helping Li Anping change his dress, Xiao Suesu also briefly reported Li Anping's next itinerary. Although the 9 royal families have been completely conquered by Li Anping, this simple relationship between superiors and subordinates obviously cannot make them completely at ease. Although the marriage plan they proposed was rejected by Li Anping still agreed to let several girls from the royal family stay by his side. It is not only to keep in touch, but also a lubricant for communication between the two parties. Li Anping's consent. Obviously, some of them were relieved. And Xiao Suesu, as a person who Li Anping was more impressed with, was naturally sent here. Became one of the selected women. She was wearing a royal blue work suit today, with a short skirt and translucent black stockings on the lower body. The work suit couldn't hide her curvy figure, and the stockings highlighted her straight long legs, which made people imagine. At this moment, Xiao Suesu held a stack of documents and said, "Sir, the Star Alliance envoys have all arrived. The leader is indeed Solomon. Lady Emma is receiving them in the conference room of the side hall." Li Anping nodded, looked at the maid and straightened the tie on his neck and said, "Let's go. Let's go and see the Star Alliance level 5 ability user." Li Anping no longer has the urgency and pressure of the previous few months. After the Battle of Morocco, his physical fitness improved again, reaching 29.5 in strength, 28.4 in speed, and 29.8 in physical fitness. In the following 3 months, the 8th Research Institute has expanded more than 10 times with the investment of the 9 royal families. Li Anping harvested clones every day, and conquered everywhere, wiping out such as Yukidao. The physical fitness of civilian organizations of the True God Church and the Revival Society is also constantly improving. But unfortunately, since his physical fitness reached 29.9 in strength, 29.9 in speed and 29.9 in physical fitness a month and a half ago, no matter how many souls he absorbs, he can't go any further. Humanity's ability has reached the limit of the limit. If you want to break through the limit, you must transform your body. Break through the natural limitations of the race, which is also the key point of impacting the 5th energy level. However, even if Li Anping is temporarily unable to improve his physical fitness, his combat power is already unparalleled in the world. Although he is not sure how strong the 6th energy level queen is, he is sure that even if he can't kill the other party will definitely not be able to defeat him. This is the conclusion drawn by Li Anping after he has a deep understanding of his own strength and clearly understands how strong he is. While thinking about these strengths, Li Anping and Xiao Suesu have unknowingly arrived in front of the meeting room. Pushing open the door, you can see Emma and a tall white man sitting on the left and right. Behind them are many ability people and senior officials. When they saw Li Anping walk into the meeting room, they all stood up. Li Anping waved his hand. "Sit down, you can discuss the specific content, I just came to take a look." As he spoke, he turned his head and looked at Solomon, with a hint of interest in his eyes. And Solomon also looked at Li Anping, looking at this man who is currently known as the strongest in the East Continent and the underground emperor of Daxia. His eyes revealed a complicated look. He remembered what the queen said to him before he left. "Solomon, you are going to Daxia this time mainly to see Li Anping. If he is as powerful as the outside world and Yulia say, don't conflict with him first. You can admit your mistakes, make amends, and make friends with him. Now our energy is mainly focused on the Code country. After the plan is completed, there will be plenty of time to deal with him. I understand, what if Li Anping is not worthy of his reputation? Then of course control him. But I believe Yulia will not lie to me. So you should prepare in advance. Also, Genhai doesn't know about Li Anping yet. He is now making a breakthrough with all his strength. Don't disturb him. All the things about Li Anping are temporarily hidden from him. I know." But just when Solomon was slightly distracted, a palm suddenly slapped his shoulder, making his face change. Li Anping suddenly appeared behind him. "You are very capable. The Star Alliance is really full of talents." Solomon's cold sweat already remained. "When and how did he appear behind me?" Although the other party's tone was calm, he did not reveal any hostility. But just standing behind him already put tremendous pressure on Solomon. Especially the sudden appearance of the other party behind him made Solomon even more frightened. Because he didn't notice the other party until the other party's hand patted his shoulder. This means that if the opponent had just killed him, Solomon would have been hit. At this moment, Li Anping's existence alone has put tremendous pressure on Solomon. He is like a god who controls everyone's life, gently strangling Solomon's throat with his palm. This means that Li Anping already has the absolute upper hand before the conversation between the two parties has even begun. Unfathomable. This man is even scarier than the rumors say. Although Solomon had a lot of thoughts in his heart, he remained calm on the surface and did not show it, at least not to the ordinary people present. He forced a smile and said, "Thank you, sir. I came to Daxia this time under the order of the leader of the alliance to restore old friendship with Daxia and resolve some misunderstandings." "Is there a misunderstanding?" Li Anping said calmly. Then there was silence. With Li Anping's silence, everyone in the conference room stopped talking, and the atmosphere was so dull that it seemed like water could be squeezed out. Emma on the side twisted her body and seemed to feel a little uncomfortable. She exclaimed in her heart, "Li Anping seems to have become stronger again. How did he achieve this terrifying speed of improvement?" Her eyes looked at Li Anping, revealing admiration and a trace of fear. Awe of power beyond one's own. After a while, Li Anping finally left the position behind Solomon. While the latter breathed a sigh of relief, he felt his whole body begin to relax uncontrollably. This is the body's natural reaction after being stressed for a long period of time, as it is unlikely that anyone's body will remain focused forever. I didn't expect that just facing his pressure head-on would consume a lot of my energy. My body tensed up instinctively, and it felt like I was desperately telling me not to be his enemy. Damn it, why do we suddenly have such an enemy? At this moment, Li Anping spoke again, "If there is a misunderstanding, how do you plan to resolve it?" Solomon smiled, waved his hand, and asked his men to bring 3 boxes. The entire box is made of pure white jade. The special lines in the jade look like white clouds running through it. Just the packaging and presentation are already extraordinary. Everyone in the conference room stared at the 3 boxes in front of Solomon, secretly guessing their contents. Solomon pointed to the 3 boxes and introduced, "These 3 are gifts prepared by me and the leader, all for you, sir." and I heard that your excellency is going to build an academy city in the country to specifically cultivate ability users of the 6 major departments. The leader of the alliance greatly appreciates your plan, and plans to invest 20 billion in materials, as well as a professional engineering team from the Star Alliance to help let's build the academy city together. To be continued, please search Ocean literature, the novels will be better and updated faster. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Lango. Chapter 192. That's right, Li Anping nodded and asked, what's in the box? Solomon smiled and picked up the first jade box and slowly opened it in front of everyone's attention. Even Emma couldn't help but become curious about what the Covenant would give. What was seen in the jade box was a test tube filled with blue liquid, which was constantly emitting bursts of cold air. Seeing the curious eyes of everyone, Solomon did not hold back and introduced directly, this is a potion made from the mysterious creature in the deep sea, the squidfish. This potion is called Mysterious Water by us. The cost and production cycle are so high that even among the Star Alliance, we only have less than 3 copies in stock. Li Anping also had a curious look in his eyes, is it the mysterious water? What is its use? He can extend the lifespan of human beings by 50 years and stay young forever. I know that with your talent, it is only a matter of time before you reach the 5th level, and you will naturally have a long lifespan by then. But not everyone around you may have this. Once this is established, the role of the mysterious water becomes apparent. As soon as Solomon said this, everyone in the conference room was shocked, and then looked at the mysterious medicine in Solomon's hand with a look of enthusiasm. Some people immediately thought of Li Anping's existence, resisted the temptation, and carefully hid the enthusiasm in their eyes. A lifespan of 50 years is a huge temptation even for level 5 ability users. None of them thought that the Star Alliance would have such a heaven-defying medicine and would even offer it to Li Anping. Li Anping's expression didn't seem to change. He picked up the mysterious water with one hand and suddenly asked Solomon, how did you make this? Solomon was stunned and said, this, even in the Star Alliance, is a very core secret. I'm sorry I can't tell you. But what I can say is that the formula for this mysterious water comes from an ancient ruins. Ancient ruins, hearing Solomon's words, Li Anping suddenly thought of the Emerald City. The black statue of Kano's sacrifice was also an ancient ruin belonging to the Shadow sect. What is the relationship between Haze race and this kind of ancient ruins? Have ancient humans already communicated with them? Li Anping thought, after the domestic affairs are over, maybe I should take time to go to the Western continent. The black race is always a huge hidden danger. Solomon on the side saw Li Anping not saying a word and thought that the other party was not satisfied with the gift, so he picked up the second jade box and opened it slowly. The second jade box is longer than the previous one, more than 1.5 meters in length. After opening it, it was a silver-white long sword. The sword is 1.2 meters long and looks very simple in shape, with no lines and no scabbard. Even the blade of the sword has not been opened, and the position of the hilt looks just a little thicker than the blade, making it easier to control. Facing this rough-looking sword, everyone's eyes showed disappointment. Solomon seemed to have known that everyone would be like this, so he was not at all flustered and introduced to Li Anping, "Sir, this sword looks ordinary, but the key point lies in its material." He suddenly asked, "Sir, according to our information, you probably don't have any weapons in your hands now, right?" Li Anping nodded, "Yes, cold weapons made with current technological means will not last long in my hands." "That's true," Solomon said, "for most level 5 ability users, ordinary weapons are not as good as their own abilities, but I believe this sword is very suitable for you, sir." With that said, he picked up the long sword in the jade box and handed it to Li Anping with both hands. The raw material of this sword, we call it adamantium metal. This metal comes from an extraterrestrial meteorite. Its characteristic is its solidity. After it is melted and shaped for the first time, No matter what the high, low or pressure, it's difficult to make him transform again. Unfortunately, we didn't know this before, so the birth of the sword can be said to be a complete accident, and using him to make the sword is also a loss. But if this sword is used by you, it may be even more powerful. Solomon carefully introduced the origin of the sword to Li Enping. When speaking in front of Li Enping, he always felt like he was dancing on the blade, as if his life could be snuffed out by the opponent anytime and anywhere. This made him more and more cautious. Sturdy, Li Enping held the hilt of the sword in one hand and the blade in the other, smiling and saying, "I want to try to see how strong it is." Li Enping's hands shook violently, and the sword made a buzzing sound. Under the force of tens of thousands of tons, the entire sword did not change at all. However, the leather shoes under Li Enping's feet cracked with a swish, and became several pieces. Broken skin. Interesting, an interested smile appeared on Li Enping's face. He simply kicked off his broken leather shoes and stood on the ground with his bare feet. Drink. With this low shout, the power in Li Enping's hands once again increased by a level. Hundreds of thousands of tons of power acted on the left and right ends of the sword body respectively. However, under this terrible pressure, the sword body still did not move at all. Change. Li Enping's eyes couldn't help but show a hint of surprise at this moment. If it were an ordinary steel bar, he would probably have crushed it into mud, but the adamant metal in front of him could not be affected at all, which made him interested. Bigger. Just at the next moment, Li Enping was about to increase his strength again to see where the limit of the sword was. Suddenly, a shout brought him back to his senses. "My lord!" It was Emma's voice. Li Enping stopped exerting force with his arms, looked back, and found that all ordinary people had fallen to the ground, and only those with special abilities could still stand steadily on the ground. There were several cracks on the wall, and there were 2 small pits under Li Enping's feet. All this was caused by Li Enping's exertion on the spot just now. He looked at everyone apologetically and said, "It's my negligence." Then he held the sword with one hand, danced a few sword flowers casually, and said with satisfaction, "Not bad, I like this sword very much." Although the limit of this sword has not been tested yet, the solidity it shows now has already made Li Enping very satisfied. As a handy weapon, he is already very qualified. Hearing that Li Enping was satisfied, Solomon was relieved and praised, "This sword is just scrap metal in other people's hands. But in your hands, its value has increased 100-fold. Speaking of which, the sword has no name yet, why don't you give it one?" "No name yet." Li Enping glanced at the sword in his hand and said, "It doesn't need any name. It's a sword, so just call it a sword. Open the 3rd box. I'm also curious about what else your Star Alliance will give out." Yes, so Solomon picked up the 3rd box again. When he opened the box, a milky white light shot out from the box, illuminating the whole room. All the people who were illuminated by the light felt relieved, as if they had put down all the burdens in their hearts and became more relaxed than ever before. People also became more energetic. Among all the people present, the only one who didn't feel anything was Li Enping. At the same time, Solomon's voice rang out, "We call this thing a spiritual gem. It is the alliance leader who consumes a lot of power to materialize his spiritual power in the real world and then stores it. It can restore people's energy, relieve fatigue, and greatly improve people's work and learning efficiency. And if it is used once." At this point, Solomon kept it a secret, paused for a while, and then continued, "It can allow an ordinary person to have the 5th energy level of the alliance leader within 12 hours. After saying this, all the people from Daxia in the conference room changed their colors. It would be a terrible thing to let an ordinary person have the 5th energy level for 12 hours. This means that the Queen can create a 5th level ability person by herself, even if this 5th level ability person can only exist for 12 hours. But he can be created repeatedly. Li Enping's eyes narrowed. He believed that the previous two gifts were definitely not the best in the Star Alliance. Like the mysterious water and the sword, there must be better versions in the Star Alliance. But these two gifts represent goodwill, and the spiritual gem in front of them is not so much goodwill as it is the Star Alliance showing off its power nakedly. The Star Alliance, led by Solomon, all smiled with satisfaction when they saw the surprised expressions of the people from Daxia. But when Solomon saw Li Anping squinting at him, it was like a bucket of cold water poured over his heart, and his smile disappeared in an instant. To be continued, please search for Ocean Literature. The novels are better and updated faster. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xianglang Go. Chapter 193. Li Anping took a deep look at Solomon and said slowly, Solomon, when I entered the conference room just now, I felt that you were very hostile to me. Sir. Solomon said nervously. Li Anping waved his hand and said, no need to explain. Speaking of which, the Star Alliance and I are enemies rather than friends. Shang Zhenhai is also with you, right? I heard that his status in the Star Alliance is not low now. Mammon and Blumen are also. They all died in my hands. When you come to Tianjing this time, in addition to wanting to reconcile with us, you also want to personally confirm my strength, right? Li Anping said as he walked towards the door. He looked outside the door with his back to everyone, and seemed not to notice the increasing sweat on Solomon's head. I like your three gifts very much, so I'll give you one too. Li Anping, who had his back to Solomon, was slowly raising his mental energy. Black aura that ordinary people couldn't see was emerging from Li Anping's body surface. In the eyes of mortals, Li Anping simply stood with his back to Solomon. But in the eyes of all the people with abilities present, Li Anping was like opening a door to hell. The terrifying black thought energy emerged from his body surface and slowly flowed through everyone's bodies. They felt as if they were in the river of hell, and death was close at hand. Li Anping turned his back and waved to Solomon, ever since you entered the door, you have wanted to test my strength, right? Now I will give you a chance. You have to attack me with all your strength. I allow you to attack me with all your strength once. I'll just stand here and won't dodge, and I won't pursue anything later. Solomon clenched his fists. His eyes were fixed on Li Anping's back. What's going on? What is his purpose here? Does he want to take action through me, know my abilities in advance? Want to find an opportunity to counterattack and kill me, and get rid of a 5th level enemy in advance? Want to use force to warn the leader through me? A series of thoughts flashed through Solomon's mind like lightning, but he was not sure what Li Anping was thinking. Is he really so sure that he can use his body to resist my attack without knowing my abilities? Even if he had the ability to regenerate super quickly, it would be too risky. Just when Solomon frowned and hesitated to think, Li Anping waved to him again and said calmly, let's do it. If you miss this opportunity and go back in despair, I'm afraid you will never be reconciled. Finally, Solomon took a deep breath, looked at Li Anping solemnly and said, I understand. The thought energy in his body also emerged, and the extremely powerful power of the 5th energy level surged out. If Li Anping is like hell, then Solomon at this moment is like a brave man who wants to challenge hell and knock on the door of hell. He looked intently at Li Anping's back, which looked like there were flaws all over. The extremely ordinary back figure was extremely terrifying in Solomon's eyes at this moment. Seemingly aware that Solomon had made up his mind, Li Anping did not urge him. He just stood there, relaxed, as if he really didn't care about Solomon at all. As time goes by, Solomon's mental energy became more and more turbulent, and even the ordinary people around him felt uneasy. The temperature dropped and a breath came out of my mouth. It's also all white gas. But apart from the increasing sweating on his head, Solomon made no other movements. Finally, It seemed that Solomon himself knew that if he continued like this, he would be crushed by the increasing pressure. He let out a loud shout, and 2 pieces of white light appeared in his hands, spraying towards Li Anping. Wherever the white light passes, there is a terrible cold air. I saw that the entire conference room, centered at Solomon's feet, began to spread visible white frost. The ground, tables, and chairs were covered with a thick layer of frost. Emma's expression changed on the side, and when she activated her ability, a huge portal suddenly appeared, blocking everyone and Solomon, absorbing all the cold air. And a portal appeared in the sky almost at the same time. The cold air spewed out from it immediately created countless ice slag, causing a light snow over the imperial city. The aftermath was so violent that Li Anping, who was hit head-on, was obviously in greater danger. When Emma withdrew from the portal, in everyone's eyes, half of the conference room was covered in ice and snow. The ultra-low temperature hit, and many people present immediately sneezed, and their bodies couldn't help but tremble. Where Li Anping stood before, there was only a white human-shaped ice sculpture left. Good. Did it succeed? The Star Alliance crowd erupted into uncontrollable cheers. It seems to relieve the huge pressure Li Anping put on them before. But the next moment, the ice sculpture slowly shattered in front of everyone's surprised eyes. Li Anping shook his body slightly and broke out of the ice. Then with a shake, all the ice chips and ice residue on his body were cleared away. Solomon looked calm on the surface, but he sighed deeply in his heart. It actually has no effect on him. Although Solomon guessed that he was not Li Anping's opponent, according to his thinking, even if his frost attack could not defeat Li Anping, it should at least injure the opponent. But now the opponent looks like he is injured, not even broken. Li Anping looked calm, as if Solomon's attack just now had never happened. You have good ability, but you didn't use your full strength just now, right? I heard that you, the Night Beast of the Star Alliance, and Shattered Sky, can work together to create an absolute death area where no life can survive. If there is a chance, I would like to try it. Solomon lowered his head and replied, there will be a chance. Li Anping smiled, did not speak, turned around and left. Emma, please entertain Solomon and others well. I have something to do today, so I will leave first. Several maids and Xiao Suesu on the side also followed Li Anping and left. Although Li Anping appeared for a short time, he left a deep impression on everyone present. Especially for the people of the Star Alliance, Li Anping's strength became more and more unfathomable in their hearts. As Li Anping left, he was also thinking about Solomon's ability in his mind. This ability to create frost and produce ultra-low temperatures is actually very scary. If he resisted it with his body, he would probably be seriously injured and use his super-fast regeneration ability. This is no different from using the body to resist Zhurong's flames. Fortunately, Li Anping did not resist with his body just now. Otherwise, although he would not be seriously injured, his body would probably need to regenerate, which would not be a good scene. He could not show his absolutely overwhelming strength. And what Li Anping used to resist the frost attack just now was one of the abilities obtained from the incarnation of mind energy, which Li Anping called the Void Force Field. That is the ability to use Li Anping's brute force in the form of a force field to act on the real world and distort all matter. The only condition is that the object of the force field must be something that Li Anping touches. In other words, if Li Anping punches out a force of 10 million tons, this force can only burst out from his body, and all his moves come from this. But now, this 10 million tons of force can exist in the form of a force field. When Li Anping covers his entire body with his power with the void force field, he can completely ignore most of the attacks in the real world. It is precisely with the void force field that Li Anping can be unscathed under Solomon's cold air attack. The void force field is also the second ability he has learned from his mind chi incarnation in the past 3 months after replenishing his mind chi. Now that I think about it, this may be the real use of Hei's power. Under the effect of the void force field, the destructive power of the power has increased by more than 10 times or even 100 times. Just as Li Anping was walking in the imperial city with a group of beautiful girls, a young man suddenly rushed over and blocked Li Anping. He waved his hand and punched Li Anping in the cheek. To be continued, please search Piaotian literature. The novels are better and updated faster. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xianglang Go. Chapter 194. The man's fisting hand was grabbed by Li Anping, and he cursed, "You scumbag! How long are you going to play with Yan'er? Let her go quickly, or I will splatter your blood even if I die." Hearing this, Li Anping raised his eyebrows and looked at a tall beauty standing side by side with Xiao Suesu, following behind Li Anping. This woman doesn't look as gorgeous and tempting as Xiao Suesu, but every move gives people a sense of nobility, elegance, and grace. The 4 words "ladies and gentlemen" are simply tailor-made for her. She is Wang Yan, a woman called Yan'er by men. At this time, she saw the man rushing out and heard what the man said. Her face turned pale and she looked at Li Anping nervously. Hearing the man's words, Wang Yan's expression changed and she hurriedly explained, "Sir, I have nothing to do with him. I don't know what he is talking nonsense about." After saying that, she walked directly to the man and said angrily, "Gao Jinwen, what on earth do you want to do? Why are you so crazy here?" "Yan'er, don't be afraid." Gao Jinwen took Wang Yan's little hand. "I really love you, and nothing can separate me from you." "Stop being so sentimental." Wang Yan pulled the other person's arm away. The 2 people started to fight each other. But from beginning to end, Li Anping just said nothing and watched with cold eyes. When Wang Yan saw him like this, she became even more frightened and quickly explained, "Sir, I really have nothing to do with him. It's just his wishful thinking." Xiao Suesu on the side frowned and whispered in Li Anping's ear, "Sir, this Gao Jinwen is a collateral descendant of the Gao family. He has no talent and no awakening ability. Therefore, he has not been taken seriously. I heard that he was the 3rd person a few years ago." After meeting Wang Yan once, he was shocked and pursued him fiercely, but Wang Yan was indeed not interested in him. After saying that, she saw Wang Yan's pitiful look, hesitated for a moment, and then continued, "Sir, do you want me to ask someone to take Gao Jinwen away? I guarantee that he will never step into Tianjing City again." Xiao Suesu said this with confidence. In the past, she was just a rich daughter of the Xiao family. Although he is also a person with abilities, the most he can do is defeat Gao Jinwen. To drive Gao Jinwen out of Tianjing City forever, I am afraid a series of methods will be needed. But now she is Li Anping's follower, and what she says, to the ears of the 9 royal families, more or less means what Li Anping means. Once she told the old guys in the family that Li Anping hated Gao Jinwen and didn't want to see him again. Then driving out of Tianjing City is easy. Find out how he entered the palace. He is a slacker. All will be punished as dereliction of duty. Then Li Anping waved his hand. After speaking, Li Anping slowly walked towards Gao Jinwen and suddenly grabbed his head. "You, what do you want to do?" Xiao Suesu and others on the side also became nervous. Is Li Anping really planning to kill people in the palace? Unexpectedly, Li Anping just pinched Gao Jinwen's skull. Lifting him up slowly, "I heard that on the black market of international killers, my head is worth 1 billion, but I never thought that there are actually some who do not know how to live or die." Hear this. Gao Jinwen's expression changed and he said nervously, "What did you say? I don't understand what you mean." Li Anping sneered. Pointing to his ears, he said, "I heard 2 heartbeats in you. One of them also contained a very weak thought energy. You possessed Gao Jinwen and controlled him to get close to me, right? But for you to come to me with such a weak excuse, it should be because you are not afraid of death, or you are just stupid." After Li Anping finished speaking, Xiao Suesu and the other women all retreated, while the palace guards on the side surrounded Gao Jinwen. After Gao Jinwen heard what Li Anping said, the corners of his mouth curled up, and then he laughed confidently. It's been discovered. But it doesn't matter. If you want to kill him, just kill him. Anyway, this is just a clone of me attached to his body. If he dies, it will be this fool who dies. Otherwise, why do you think I dare to find an excuse to come to you? Seeing Li Anping frown, Gao Jinwen became even more proud. Li Anping, I know you are very strong, but in a battle of abilities, whoever is stronger and faster will not win. There is nothing you can do against my abilities. Really, Li Anping was non-committal. Of course, I said that I am just a clone in Gao Jinwen. Even if you beat him into electronics, it will be useless. Gao Jinwen chuckled, and I am not here to assassinate you at all. I am just here to see you. Let's see if you are qualified to join the divine realm. God's domain? The name is quite good, but is it some kind of rural civilian organization of ability users? If you want to be tough, it's time to do it now. The inheritance of the divine realm lasts longer than you think. His Majesty the Black King Gao Jinwen smiled even more proudly when he saw Li Anping's eyes slightly change after hearing this title. It's not like no one in the human world knows your identity. If you don't want to truly become a public enemy of mankind, consider joining us. Otherwise, your final result will be to become a public enemy of mankind. No matter how strong you are, how can you still defeat all mankind? Did you survive the siege and pursuit? Li Anping said calmly, okay, I can join your rural organization, as long as you let me be your leader. Gao Jinwen said angrily, you will regret it. Just after Gao Jinwen finished speaking, Li Anping's hand touched the back of Gao Jinwen's neck, and he murmured, so it's here. You. Seeing Gao Jinwen panic, Li Anping said, you want to ask, how did I find you? I just said so much to you just to delay time. I can hear 2 heartbeats, so I can naturally hear where you are attached, but it just takes some time. Gao Jinwen was stunned. He realized that the few words Li Anping had just said to him seemed to be a quarrel, but in fact there was no sincerity at all, and it was just to delay time. As he said that, Li Anping's fingers instantly inserted into Gao Jinwen's neck, and the next moment a disgusting thumb-sized meatball had been grabbed out by Li Anping. There were several meat whiskers on the meatball connecting Gao Jinwen's body, but Li Anping's speed was too fast, and the meatball had no time to react, and was directly grabbed out, cutting off the connection with Gao Jinwen. He was held between 2 fingers of Li Anping, but he was still restless and kept struggling, as if he wanted to escape. Looking closely, this flesh ball was actually a human figure, just like a small person. While struggling, he kept cursing, let me go, this is just one of my clones. You can't kill me even if you kill him. It will only cause my crazy revenge. Ignoring the struggle and threat of the villain, Li Anping squeezed the other party into a pile of pieces with his palm. Blood and flesh splashed directly in Li Anping's palm. The villain's voice was also interrupted. Xiao Suesu on the side asked, Sir, don't you need a live person? No. Li Anping threw Gao Jinwen, who had fainted in his hand, to the palace guard on the side, and replied, just interrogate the other one. After that, a sonic boom was heard in the air, and Li Anping had disappeared with a string of white air waves. On the street of South Street outside the palace, a ragged homeless man was lying under the shade of a tree. The homeless man, who had a leisurely face, suddenly screamed and spit out a mouthful of blood. Damn it! This Li Anping actually dared to destroy one of my clones. Seeing the citizens passing by looking at him spitting blood in surprise, the homeless man shouted angrily, what the hell, go do what you should do. Seeing the ordinary citizens around him timidly and quickly leaving, the homeless man wiped his mouth and spit a mouthful of blood foam on the ground. This Li Anping, you wait, I can't kill you, but I can retaliate against the people around you. The divine realm will not let you go. But just as the homeless man was cursing, a shocking thought energy rushed from the imperial city to all directions like a wave, sweeping all the surroundings aside in an instant. The homeless man was stunned by this momentum. After Li Anping's mind energy was supported by the mind energy incarnation, the amount of mind energy has become as large as a mountain or a sea. Then a black shadow flashed in the corner of the homeless man's eyes. He turned his head blankly, and he didn't know when Li Anping was standing beside him. With the mind energy scan and superhuman hearing, Li Anping can almost detect the area of dozens of kilometers around the main body. The homeless man just said a few words to himself, and his position was accurately found. Then Li Anping appeared next to the homeless man at a speed as fast as teleportation. From beginning to end, it took about 3 seconds. That is, after the homeless man felt the mind energy emitted by Li Anping from the imperial city, the other party followed him. To be continued, please search Ocean Literature. The novel is better and updated faster. Man at the Top of the Food Chain. Author, Xianglang Guo. Chapter 195. The tramp stood there, and it seemed that even breathing became difficult. He looked at Li Anping in front of him, and his expression became more and more ugly. At this moment, Li Anping spoke. This body has only one heartbeat, and I can't feel any trace of possession from you. So it seems that he is your real body. The tramp's eyes moved, and with a wicked smile on his face, he suddenly said, Li Anping, do you want to kill me? Once you go against our divine realm, you will risk your identity being exposed. At that time, the whole country will be your enemy. You have to think clearly. As the Lord of the Dragon Bird of Daxia, I sit in Tianjing. If I am disturbed by you, and I break into the palace recklessly, and I still retreat unscrupulously, then I am unworthy of being the strongest in Daxia. Li Anping spoke slowly, and a trace of ferocity flashed across the tramp's face, and a continuous hissing sound came from his body. His skin kept breaking, and one flesh ball after another turned into a little man, jumping in all directions. Many of them were like aliens and blood corpses, biting towards Li Anping's neck. But his action was too late. Just when the little meat people just got out of his body, his eyes were suddenly covered by a black shadow. Li Anping, barefoot, wearing a suit, expressionless, was like the king of gods at this time, holding the most terrible power in his hand, and punched the homeless man. Boom! The homeless man's body was like being bombarded by a missile, and it was directly destroyed, scattered into countless fragments and shot in all directions. Li Anping's punch had a force of millions of tons, and even a tank was blown to pieces. Not to mention a living person. But just when the homeless man turned into countless fragments and flew in all directions, Li Anping's fist suddenly loosened, and then clenched it fiercely, and his 5 fingers closed in an instant. Under the effect of the void force field, the air around him seemed to have encountered a black hole, and the atmosphere gathered towards Li Anping's right palm at a degree visible to the naked eye. The fragments of the homeless man's body were also forcibly gathered together by Li Anping with this airflow, and the flesh and bones were squeezed together fiercely, forming a pile of terrible flesh and blood. On the surface of the flesh and blood, a human face vaguely emerged, with fangs and claws, as if trying to struggle out. Unfortunately, the whole mass of flesh and blood was under the influence of the void force field. It was wrapped by a mass of air. The huge force pressed on it, leaving him no chance of escaping. Seeing the flesh and blood struggling violently, Li Anping's right hand suddenly pinched it, and the flesh and blood made a tooth-grinding sound. Countless blood seeped out from the surface of the... Li Anping said slowly, "Don't worry. I have a lot of things to ask you." The 8th Research Institute. In the underground training room. 2 figures, one black and one gold, broke through the air at an astonishing speed. This training room is several kilometers large and is completely composed of artificial deserts, on undulating sand dunes. The 2 figures kept moving at high speed. Every second, they would collide dozens or hundreds of times, making a series of crackling sounds. The hurricane formed by the collision blew over the desert, forming sand waves tens of meters high. Just at the edge of the artificial desert, Sun Hao was watching the two figures in the desert with wide eyes. The high-speed moving figures left a trail of afterimages in the air, and he had to move his neck and eyes at high speed. While watching, he said, "Jingguang is getting stronger and stronger. His speed after transformation is already 70% of mine." 70%? You overestimate yourself, right? I think it's at least 90%, Yang Guang said disdainfully. Sun Hao said, "Don't think I dare not hit you because you are disabled. Please take a look at your metal arm before you say this." Just as the two were arguing, there was another loud noise in the small artificial desert, and a sand wave more than 10 meters high rolled towards the two. However, facing the overwhelming sand, Sun Hao and Yang Guang just released their own mind energy to block all the sand that swept in. Then they hurried to the center of the desert. In the middle of the training room, the original sand disappeared, revealing the metal floor. In a huge depression, Jingguang, who had returned to his normal form, knelt on the ground and gasped for breath. Li Anping on the other side stood there calmly, as if he was not the one fighting before. Jingguang panted and asked intermittently, "How much strength did you use?" Li Anping thought for a while and said, "About 2%. Then Sun Hao and the others saw that Jingguang punched a faint fist mark on the metal floor, and then left with a constipated expression. Although Jingguang has been working very hard during this period, the gap between him and Li Anping has become larger and larger, which makes him a little depressed. Sun Hao on the side laughed secretly. Since Jingguang cooperated with Yang Guang to maintain the 8th Research Institute during Li Anping's fake death, the top leaders of Daxia Longke basically treated him as half a member. The three of them were supposed to train together today. After the 8th Research Institute received a lot of investment from the 9 royal families, many of the test sites here have become the most solid and advanced training rooms. Who knew that today Li Anping seemed to have brought something for Shi Wen to analyze, and ended up coming to the training room to play with them. In fact, among the entire Daxia Dragon Bird, except for Emma, only they can play with Li Anping. Although other ability users, such as Yan Bei, Tang Vihan, and Qian Duoduo, have great potential, they are not melee type. But a few of them can get a little better than Li Anping. But after one round, even though Li Anping tried his best, the three of them could only hold on for about 1 minute on average. Li Anping thought, if you want to reach the 5th energy level, you must completely break away from the limitations of human flesh. I don't know if going through hell-style training will help. You should find a chance to try it. However, with my current strength, it is not easy to train like hell, so I have to plan carefully. Now Li Anping, if he wants to break through to the 5th energy level, he has 3 ideas in mind. One is to figure out the incarnation of mind energy, and go to the western continent to find Hei's kin, thoroughly understand Hei's abilities, and then prescribe the right medicine. The second is to rely on the immortal desire to conduct real hell-style training in an attempt to find a breakthrough between life and death. The third is to find an opportunity to eat the Queen of Heaven, using the huge energy of the 6th energy level to penetrate the barrier between the 4th and 5th energy levels in one fell swoop. Seeing Jingguang leaving like this, Li Anping said, "There is something I want you to do. Are you interested?" "No interest, I want to train." Jingguang told the truth. After being defeated by Li Anping with pure strength and speed, he seemed to vent all his emotions on his body. Various strength, speed, and endurance trainings are endless. However, this kind of training is indeed very useful. When Jingguang fought in the past, he only relied on the superiority of his abilities and his unlimited mental energy to directly crush the opponent. In the past few months, he has been exercising every day to hone his body, and both his speed and strength have been greatly improved. This also caused his combat effectiveness to increase dramatically after his transformation. After all, the effect of his transformation is to increase his strength and speed tenfold. The higher his physical fitness, the stronger the effect after transformation. Several people with melee combat abilities in Daxia Lonke who often trained with Jingguang felt that this kid might break through to the 4th level at any time. By then, he will probably be one of the top 3 in Daxia Lonke. After being rejected, Li Enping didn't take it seriously and continued, "Relax a bit, take a vacation, go home and see your parents. Aren't they worried about you? It's too late for them to be happy when they know that I became a high-ranking official in the capital before graduating from high school." Jingguang glanced sideways at Li Enping. "What is the mission?" Half a year ago, Scorpion hired a scientist to cooperate with the research of the 8th Research Institute. This scientist has a nephew who seems to have a deep prejudice against us. He thinks that we kidnapped his uncle. He has been secretly investigating us, and they also attacked our lone member, although there were no casualties, but the impact was very bad. And just last month, he gathered a group of escaped guys from the civilian organization of ability users that we wiped out and formed a small organization called the Avengers. I hope you will incorporate them or wipe them out. Of course, you are not the only one, Zhou Mai and Yan Bei will go with you. Originally, I could kill them easily, but in the next period of time, I may have a lot of things to do. This organization called the Avengers seems to be very powerful, so I want you to go with Yan Bei and the others. How about it, are you interested?" "Okay, I get it." At this moment, a male voice suddenly sounded on the broadcast in the training room, "General Li Enping, the results of the sample have been analyzed. We are waiting for you in experiment No. 18. To be continued, please search Ocean Literature, novels are better update faster. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment." Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xianglang Go. Chapter 196. In a laboratory deep in the 8th Research Institute, a beautiful female doctor wearing black-rimmed glasses and a white coat was introducing the scene in front of Li Enping. I saw a total of hundreds of test tubes placed in the room in front of me. In each test tube, there was a red blood clot the size of a thumb. It was turning into a little person and struggling, but there were several silver pliers inside the test tube to hold them tightly. Clamped down tightly, no matter what they did they couldn't really get out. The beautiful female doctor named Xiaolu is a mixed-race girl who came to Daxia from the western continent to study. However, beneath her beautiful appearance is a passionate heart for science. Otherwise, she would not be willing to give up all contact with the outside world and concentrate on working in the research institute. At this moment, she looked at the hundreds of test tubes in the laboratory with eagerness, and introduced to Li Enping behind her, "What a miraculous ability! The experimental subject can split itself into hundreds of weak sub-bodies, each of which he has the power of an adult and shares the mind of the main body. Even more magically, each of his sub-bodies can control the human body by inhabiting the spine of an ordinary person. If he wants to kill the experimental subject, all the sub-bodies must be separated at the same time. Kill. Otherwise, according to our calculations, even if only one is left, it can repopulate to its original number within a month." Having said this, she looked at Li Enping sincerely and said, "But I don't recommend that you execute him. The time is too short and we haven't had time to do many measurements and experiments. I hope that he can be handed over to me later. This will definitely happen. It's an important step in the history of biology." Li Enping nodded and let Xiaolu go out. He looked at the little man in the test tube. He found that they were all staring at him ferociously. Li Enping laughed, "Your abilities are indeed similar to what I thought. The moment I attacked you and saw you split into so many clones, I roughly guessed your abilities, so I temporarily changed the attack method. Brought you to the institute." As he spoke, Li Enping turned off the surveillance video in the laboratory. He knew that what the other person said next might be very important. He doesn't know this like others. Can this guy think about so many things at the moment he attacks me? Although he was very afraid of Li Enping in his heart, this ability user from the God realm did not completely give in. He still shouted through the test tube, "Li Enping, the divine realm is by no means as simple as you think. Is your current power incomplete? Once the elders of the divine realm unite and make your identity public, can you imagine what kind of the result? Besides, there is no big conflict between us, so why should you be aggressive when you come up?" Li Enping said nothing. He thought, the Dark Lord he mentioned before and the context of that threat, did he really regard me as a villain? So that is to say the so-called God's domain knows the black race very well. They even had a way of identifying race, and it is very likely that they also understand Hayes' racial abilities and have ways to restrain them. Thinking of this, Li Enping had some concerns in his mind. He couldn't directly tell the other party that he was not a black man, otherwise the other party would probably deceive him or even not tell him the information about God's domain. On the contrary, if you pretend to be so, the other party will instead say a lot of basic information as if everyone knows it. So Li Enping said, "Why don't I know the existence of God's realm, and why did you find me?" He, because you are not the first demon to come to this continent. Before you came to this continent, demons have already found this place. Humanity paid a heavy price, and about 100 people were sacrificed. 80% of the population was needed to completely seal the demon. But because of this, we got a lot of information from that demon, and we mastered the method to fight against you. Although you are very powerful now, once a war begins with the divine realm, the outcome is still uncertain. Sure enough, after the other party regarded Li Enping as an inhuman creature, he revealed a lot of information at once. Because the other party completely thinks of Li Enping as a non-human being. But after knowing this, Li Enping thought for a while, and then guided, "You said the power to fight us? Do you mean ability? You are not the only ones who have this kind of thing, right?" After hearing Li Enping's words, the man continued, "In order to fight against you, we humans have mastered powerful power and developed abilities specifically to fight against monsters like you. But I came here this time, firstly, to confirm your identity. The second step is to confirm how much of your ability you have awakened. But according to our observation, you are not an irrational beast all the time, and you can be regarded as a partner. I admit that the way I came to see you was inappropriate, but I didn't hurt anyone, right?" Li Enping sneered and said, "What's your name? You can call me a zombie." Then Li Enping walked to the laboratory console and entered a few commands. One of the hundreds of test tubes was suddenly powered on. The bloody villain among them screamed and turned into charcoal. "Zombie, if you don't want to die anymore, just answer my questions honestly." Next, under Li Enping's torture, the zombie revealed information about the God's domain bit by bit. When Li Enping walked out of the laboratory and handed the zombie to Xiaolu, he was completely dead. Only hundreds of corpses were left for her to analyze. Li Enping ignored Xiaolu, who looked disappointed. He didn't get much information about God's domain from the zombies' mouths. Because zombies are very powerful, they are just peripheral members of the God's domain. According to the zombies, the so-called God's domain was established after humans first discovered and sealed the demons. The so-called demons are the race that Hay belongs to. They have nothing to do with the demons in myths and legends. The word demon is just the name given to this creature by humans at that time. And the so-called God's domain is the organization established by humans at that time to fight against demons after they went through untold hardships to seal the demons. However, as time passed, humans developed. The demons never appeared again. The God's domain quietly hid in the shadows of the world, never showing up in front of people, just to develop against the demons that might come. But humans are fickle after all. As hundreds and thousands of years passed, watching the humans on the earth constantly quarreling, Dynasties rose and fell one after another. Finally, the leaders of the god's domain developed ambitions, and the nature of the god's domain gradually changed. Although they are still quietly accumulating strength, their goals are completely different. It is conceivable how shocked they were when they found out that Li Enping was the demon they had been waiting for a long time. But the changes brought by time even made them forget their original purpose. That's why zombies were sent to invite Li Enping to join. All the above information was obtained and deduced by Li Enping from the zombies. However, after knowing so much, Li Enping still had many doubts in his heart. How did humans in the past seal the so-called demons? The God realm actually misunderstood my identity. Why did it invite me to join? And it also directly sent zombies, such peripheral members. And how credible is the information that the zombies were told by the God realm? The purpose of the God realm made Li Enping very confused. But these questions may have a chance to get answers. According to the zombies, if he agrees to join the God realm, then he will go to the top floor of the Sun Tree, the tallest building in Dongyang, on the first day of next month. There will be someone to receive him and answer his questions. While thinking, Li Enping has walked out of the research institute and flew towards the palace. He now rarely relies on transportation when he moves around in Tianjin City. He just flies wherever he wants to go. Firstly, it is fast, and secondly, some propagandists believe that Li Enping can subtly bring superpowers into the lives of ordinary people by doing this. However, after flying all the way back to the palace, Li Enping heard noises from afar. A team of hundreds of people were holding flags and banners and marching in front of the palace gate. When they heard the sound of breaking through the air from the sky, they saw the white air waves left by Li Enping's flying, and they seemed to be more excited. Especially the few people who took the lead, holding loudspeakers and shouting slogans, seemed to be ready to rush into the palace. To be continued, please search for Ocean literature. The novels are better and updated faster. Man at the Top of the Food Chain. Author, Xionglang Guo. Chapter 197. Get those monsters out of our lives. We don't need protection. Get away, dictator. In front of the palace, a group of protesters held banners high and shouted and made a fuss. Most of them were young people, both men and women. There were more than 200 people in total, attracting many passers-by to watch. As for the TV stations, they have already received the news, and most of them would not have the courage to report such a thing. The reason why I say most of them is naturally because there was a TV reporter with the cameras standing behind the parade. The cameraman said anxiously, "Brother, the leader said not to get involved in this matter. I think we should stop filming, right?" The middle-aged reporter standing in front of him said, "What are you afraid of? Does that monster in the palace dare to kill us? If you take pictures carefully, I will expose his true face. This will be the biggest news in history." The cameraman shook his head, glanced at the heavily guarded palace, then raised the camera and pointed it at the reporter. "Hello everyone, this is Focus on the World, I am Tian Haoan." In the security room, Li Enping's ears twitched, then he pointed at Tian Haoan on the screen and said, "Who is this man? Why is there a TV station reporting on it?" Lu Feng said from the side, "His name is Tian Haoan, and he was originally just a third-rate host. But recently he has been satirizing current affairs, criticizing the authorities, and..." After looking at Lu Feng for a moment, Li Enping frowned and said, "Attack me." Yes, relying on these unique remarks in the show, he has gained a lot of supporters online. Of course. There are even more critics. Have you been comforted? Lu Feng replied, "It's useless. This guy doesn't take soft and hard advice, and he doesn't even want to send money. It's useless to let his boss threaten him. I think he wants to be famous. He is the kind of guy who wants to be remembered in history, and it doesn't matter if he dies." Guy. Li Enping looked at Tian Haoan and the marchers jumping up and down on the screen, and suddenly sneered, I want to bring them heaven, but they complain that they have lost the freedom to stay in hell. Human beings are really ridiculous. Lu Feng suddenly coughed a few times and ordered to the royal guards in the security room, you all get out first. You are not allowed to come in without my order. Then he said to Li Anping respectfully, Sir. Li Anping sighed and said, Don't worry. I'm measured. In front of the public. I won't say such things. Hearing Li Anping's answer, Lu Feng stopped talking. As one of the executors of Li Anping's plan, he is also responsible for building Li Anping's image of justice to the outside world. In his eyes, Li Anping was powerful enough. Cold. Reason. Under his leadership, Daxia will develop to a peak, even the most powerful country in the world. So he didn't want any stain on Li Anping. Sir, do you need us? Lu Feng made a knife gesture. It doesn't matter. Li Anping glanced at the crowd on the monitor and said, do it now. It just gives people an excuse to attack us. This kind of clown can never be cleaned up. But keep an eye on him, and deal with him once he crosses the line. Lu Feng leaned over and said, yes. At this time, Li Qian, Momo, and the entire country's intelligence system had completed preliminary integration. Li Anping could know most of what was happening in the country just by sitting in the Daxia Longke base. There was so much information that he couldn't possibly use all his time to process. So except for a few key people, he would look at it every day. Most of the other fragmentary information has been handed over to Lu Feng's intelligence personnel for analysis and sorting. He would not read every item unless necessary. While the two were chatting about the next arrangements, Li Anping's pupils narrowed slightly when he looked at the monitor, and then he said quickly, you go back first, I have something to do, so I will go out for a while. But sir. Before Lu Feng could finish his words, when he looked up, Li Anping had disappeared. There was only a gust of wind blowing, and the door of the security room hit the wall with a bang. 2 hours later, the demonstration was finally dispersed by the police. Several boys and girls who looked like college students walked onto the bus. It's so tiring. I didn't expect the parade to be so tiring. I thought it would be interesting, but in the end I just stood there and shouted slogans. Forget it, don't come next time. By the way, Anna, we will take the Line 9 subway next. Will you go back with us? Among the boys and girls, one girl with a particularly outstanding temperament, delicate appearance, and a ponytail smiled and shook her head, no, I'll just wait here for the bus. Oh, there were disappointed voices from the boys. The girl in front of them was their dream girl. As a goddess-level figure in the same department of the university, if it hadn't been for the opportunity of this parade, they wouldn't have been able to talk to her at all. Seeing the disappointed looks of the boys, Anna smiled, turned around and left. Only an infinitely beautiful back is left. Oh, Anna is so cute. I wonder if Anna has a boyfriend. The girl on the side said sourly, she is the eldest daughter of a rich family. You losers, don't think too much about it. Of course, Anna couldn't hear what they said. She stood alone at the station, with a pure temperament and cute appearance. Also wearing tiny shorts and pantyhose. Just standing there attracted the attention of many men. But she didn't seem to notice any of this, she just lowered her head and didn't know what to think. That's all the way back home. When you walk in the door and turn on the lights. A man's voice came into his ears, you hate me so much that you need to come to a demonstration. Anna screamed. 80% of any single woman would have this reaction when she returns home and hears a strange man's voice coming from her room. But when Anna saw Li Anping clearly sitting on the sofa, surprise appeared in her eyes. Li Anping. How do you know I live here? I saw you demonstrating at the entrance of the palace and followed you all the way. After all, it's not good for people to see you having contact with me. Oh. After Anna said this, she suddenly didn't know what to say. She had a lot of things to say to Li Enping, but the two hadn't seen each other for a long time, and Li Enping's current status was not what it used to be, which made her even more confused. Don't know what to say. Li Enping sighed inwardly when he saw Anna's hesitant look. When she was in college, Anna had a crush on him, so how could he not feel it? It's just that the family gap between the two was too big at that time. He felt that it was destined to be fruitless. So he didn't accept it, which was a regret he had when he was an ordinary person in the past. As for now. Why did you come to Tianjin? Li Enping asked. Oh, I got admitted as a graduate student at Tianjin University. Li Enping nodded, and then there was a long silence. Two people who are familiar yet strange. I didn't know what to say for a moment. Li Enping stood up from the sofa. Walking towards the door, I'm sorry. I scared you today. I just wanted to come and see my old classmates after seeing you in front of the palace today. I have no other intention. Li Enping gave Anna a note. There was an email address written on it, and he said, if you need my help with anything, just send me an email. After saying that, Li Enping walked towards the door. Today, it can be regarded as his final fate. Seeing that Li Enping was about to leave, Anna thought that he had seen her participating in the parade and was a little angry. She hurriedly explained, I didn't intentionally go to the parade. I didn't know it was a demonstration before I went. I just heard that I had the opportunity to meet later. I found out it was a demonstration against you, and I wanted to leave. But I really... Anna bit her lip and said, I really want to see you, even from a distance. Seeing that Li Enping's footsteps did not change and he was still walking out, Anna gritted her teeth and gave in. Because she knew that after this farewell, she might never see the man in front of her again in her life. She rushed forward, hugged Li Enping forcefully from behind, and said in a very light voice, I miss you. Anna's speed allows even an ordinary person to dodge. But at this time, Li Enping's skill enough to dodge bullets had no effect at all. His steps became heavy, so heavy that he couldn't even avoid a girl's hug. The other party's subtle voice reached his ears, but it pierced his mind like lightning from the sky. He wanted to push Anna away, but he felt the warmth coming from behind. A pair of arms that could tear the sky apart, but couldn't push away the embrace of someone who loved him. Perhaps for men, a woman's tenderness is the most powerful weapon in the world. If the person hugging him is Li Qian, Xiao Suesu, or even Emma, he can push the other person away. But Anna, the Anna who loved the original Li Enping and the original Li Enping who had nothing. I'm sorry. After a long silence, Li Enping said slowly. The next second, when Anna felt her arms relax and there was no one in front of her, she couldn't help but shed tears. And Li Enping had already appeared on the roof of a building hundreds of meters away. He was hundreds of meters away, looking at Anna behind the window, watching the tears on her face remain like a kite with a broken string. He took out his mobile phone and mobilized a group of people to protect each other in the future. He has too many enemies now. Although Li Enping is strong enough, he is only 100% sure to protect himself. Anna is just an ordinary girl. Any slight change in the environment or the aftermath of a battle between ability users can be enough to kill her. The slightest flimsy assassination was enough to kill her. Anna is not suitable for him at all. Being with him would be too dangerous for Anna. Cut off the relationship with Anna and let someone protect her secretly. This may be the best way at the moment. Perhaps after the Star Alliance is completely suppressed, the countries in the southern border are pacified, and the countries near the eastern continent such as Ice Castle and Dongyang are brought under their rule, as well as the newly emerged divine realms, they will also be dealt with. Only after all these threats are eliminated, the eastern continent is completely unified, and Li Enping's utopia begins to be established, can we start to consider this kind of thing. At this moment, Lu Feng's call came, and his voice came from the mobile phone. Sir, something unexpected happened. To be continued, Please search Ocean Literature for better novels and faster updates. Man at the Top of the Food Chain. Author, Xianglang Go. Chapter 198. The meeting room in the palace was still crowded even though it was past midnight. There were all kinds of information on the conference table. There was also an ashtray full of cigarette butts. Li Anping sat at the top of the meeting room, looking at a document in his hand. 10 minutes later, Lu Sheng hurried into the meeting room with a notebook and a computer. Seeing everyone's questioning eyes, he nodded heavily and said, "There are results." As he said that, he put the notebook face on the projector on the conference table, and a report on the East China Sea was displayed on the projection. Pictures and cousins came into everyone's eyes, and Lu Sheng said calmly, "According to the detection of the Earthquake Bureau, 2 strong earthquakes occurred in succession on the seabed of the East China Sea, with magnitudes above 9. What does the submarine earthquake have to do with us?" said one person. Lu Sheng pointed to the coastline on the projector and said, "According to the calculations and detections of the Earthquake Bureau, the tsunami caused by this earthquake is heading towards the eastern coastline of our country at a speed of 800 km per hour. According to their predictions, the wave height of this tsunami will exceed 30 meters after reaching the east coast. Other places are not a big problem. You just need to take shelter in advance on the coastline. The biggest problem is Jinggang City on the east coast peninsula. If a tsunami hits, I'm afraid millions of square kilometers in the city will be submerged. Migration is too difficult, and the losses caused by the tsunami are probably hundreds of millions. What should we do? We can't stop the tsunami." Li Anping asked, "How long will it take for the tsunami to reach Jinggang City?" 14 hours. Instantly. Everyone whispered. A man stood up and said, "Can we use explosives to blow up the tsunami?" "How is that possible? It's ridiculous." Someone else suggested, "We can only let the citizens of Jinggang City evacuate in advance. Time is too tight and we need the cooperation of the army." Lu Feng on the side said, "Can you ask Lord Emma to use the portal? This will greatly improve efficiency." "Yes. It will be fine if you use the portal." "Then can you let Lord Emma send the tsunami directly into the portal?" Li Anping shook his head, "The area is too large. It is impossible for Emma to cover hundreds of kilometers of coastline. There is no way. At this point, we can only seize the time and let the citizens of Jinggang City evacuate quickly. Time is too short. I'm afraid ordinary people will resist." "There is no way to resist. Is life more important or money more important? Let the Jinggang City government do a good job of appeasement." Just as a group of people were discussing heatedly, Li Anping tapped the table with his fingers. The whole conference room was instantly quiet. Li Anping pointed to the coastline on the projector and said, "If it's just Jinggang City, I can try to stop the tsunami." When Li Anping finished speaking, the entire conference room seemed to quietly become another world. Yoyoshi swallowed his saliva, and then asked again with a face full of doubt, "Sir, you said you can stop the tsunami in Jinggang City." No wonder they were surprised. The water wall formed by the tsunami has huge energy and is tens of meters high. Such a powerful wave ice wall repeats every few minutes or tens of minutes. Rushing forward, it is enough to destroy everything on the coastline. With the development of modern technology, there is no way to stop it. Especially this tsunami, once it reaches Jinggang City, its power is enough to submerge most of the peninsula, causing the death of hundreds of thousands of people, and other economic and material losses are difficult to calculate. I am about 60% sure. You continue to arrange the evacuation work. I will try it alone first." At this time, Lu Feng suddenly had an idea and asked, "Sir, can you take a special plane to Jinggang City? Can you bring a film crew with you?" "What for?" "If possible, I hope to record the footage of you stopping the tsunami and broadcast it as news material." This will be very helpful for the policies we are promoting now. Then please arrange it quickly. Yes, Lu Feng quickly took out his mobile phone and started to make phone calls to arrange it. While people in the Imperial City were busy, some places outside the Imperial City were also surging with undercurrents. In a corner of the Song family compound, Song Cheng was sitting at his desk, turning on his computer and reading posts on the internet. He smiled from time to time. From behind him, he could see that the screen was full of posts criticizing Li Enping, especially an account named Tianhaoan, which was particularly active. His Weibo was full of jokes criticizing the current rulers, especially Li Enping. Since Song Cheng was placed under house arrest by his family, he could only read these posts every day to comfort himself. But no matter how much he saw, he couldn't wipe out the anger in his heart. The Song family fell into decline and became a pawn in Li Enping's hands. He was directly placed under house arrest by the elders of the family because he was Song Bang's younger brother and had conflicts with Xia Yunyuan. They were afraid that he would offend Li Enping. His future was ruined and he was like a useless person. How could he not be angry and mad? At this moment, a woman's voice suddenly sounded behind him. No matter how happy you are to curse online, Li Enping in real life can't hurt a hair. Who? Song Cheng turned around and saw a mysterious woman standing behind her. The woman's body and face were like a layer of fog. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't see the other person's appearance clearly. The woman said, "Don't bother. I used my ability. You can't see what I look like now. Who are you? What do you want from me?" Song Cheng calmed down at this time. If the other party really wanted to kill him, he could sneak behind him silently without talking to him. Since the other party spoke, it meant that he wanted to communicate. There was something for him to do. Do you want to deal with Li Enping? I can give you some help. Song Cheng frowned and said, "What nonsense are you talking about? If you keep talking like this, I'll call someone." The woman smiled and said, "You don't have to be afraid that Li Enping can hear what we are talking about now. After I came, I used my ability to cover the entire room. The air can't be transmitted. No matter how strong Li Enping's hearing is, he can't hear what we are saying here." The woman saw that Song Cheng still didn't speak, so she continued, "You don't believe it? If Li Enping can really hear our conversation, with his strength, he would have appeared here long ago." Song Cheng was suspicious and said, "Even if what you said is true, what help can you give me?" The woman smiled mysteriously, and then pointed out, Song Cheng felt endless light drilling towards his forehead, and unknown energy increased rapidly in his body. "What did you do to me?" The light dissipated, and Song Cheng looked at his hands. A stream of energy like airflow kept flowing in his body, and all the physical illnesses for many years disappeared without a trace. He never felt that at any moment, his power was so strong. I became a capable person. What a fuss. I just stimulated your bloodline ability. Your current ability level is only level 3." As she spoke, the woman's body turned into countless fragments and slowly disappeared into the air, leaving only a package in front of Song Cheng. "The things I left for you, after you absorb the spiritual power in it, are enough to reach the 4th energy level, which is a bit useful. But it is still not enough to deal with Li Enping. So don't make it public, be careful to hide your power, and find a chance to leave Tianjing City. When you get there, with your identity as one of the 9 royal families and your current power, it will be easy to raise a force. Only then will you have a chance to compete with Li Enping." As the woman finished speaking, her figure completely disappeared, leaving Song Cheng alone standing in the study. There was a ferocious light in her eyes like a beast. In a bedroom in the hotel, Solomon from the Star Alliance seemed to be waiting for something. A moment later, a breeze blew from the window, and a woman's figure appeared in the room. "Leader." No need to be polite, the woman waved her hand, and her lower body was disappearing, I used the spiritual fire I brought with me to directly increase the strength of Song Chen, Li Tai, Zhang Kuang and others. Although it mainly relies on the spiritual fire, my clone consumes too much power. There is not much power left. This time I came to Daxia in your body, one is to see Li Anping with my own eyes, and the other is to find some people in Daxia to be his opponents. Unfortunately, they are all trash. I just hope that after I help them, they can waste a little bit of Li Anping's time. Then leader, what do you think of Li Anping? His power is indeed very strong, but his goal is wrong. He is simply a madman who wants to build an ideal country. One day, he will be the opposite of the entire Daxia high level. What we have to do now is not to make an enemy of him before that. And his power is very limited and has too many shortcomings. The queen sneered, as long as I stabilize the power of the 6th energy level and Genhai breaks through to the 5th energy level. By then, even if he reaches the 5th energy level, he will definitely not be our opponent. To be continued, please search Ocean Literature, the novel is better and updated faster. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Man at the top of the food chain. Author, Xianglang Go. Chapter 199. Dongyang, in the forest of Mount Fuji. A young man with long hair and gorgeous robes was sitting in a pavilion. He held a samurai sword and brushed the blade with his fingertips. After a long time, he sighed softly, "Not bad, make me another 1,000 according to the standard." After that, he threw the samurai sword in his hand to the swordsmith who was kneeling in front of him. The swordsmith reached out to catch the samurai sword, made a sound of "hey," and left respectfully. At this time, an old man sitting next to the young man said, "Xinjun, you have thoroughly understood Li Anping's information, right?" The old man had white hair and kept his eyes closed when he spoke, giving people the feeling that he was a blind man. However, as soon as he spoke, the young man next to him replied respectfully, "Yes, I have seen it all. He is very powerful and is indeed a very good candidate." "Oh? Very powerful? Aren't you worried that you can't beat him?" The old man smiled. The young man, Xinjun, showed a confident smile and said, "The so-called superpowers are inherently limited. Environment, distance, method, there is no omnipotent power in the world. Maybe I can't confront the army head-on like Li Anping and regard all modern weapons as correct. But as long as I fight with people with abilities, I am invincible." Xinjun said loudly, "As long as Li Anping appears in front of me, he will definitely lose. But what I don't understand is after saying that, Xinjun turned his head and said, why send zombies to pass on the message? Even, why send people to pass on the message? If you want Li Anping to come to Dongyang, there are many ways, right? Although the zombie is only a peripheral member, his flesh and blood clone is indeed wrong ability. Originally, I planned to use this ability to control many mortal officials and master more resources. Zombies are unreliable. They are unstable factors." Xinjun was startled and asked in a low voice, "Did you see it?" The old man closed his eyes and nodded and said, "Xinjun, don't worry. I will definitely bring Li Anping to you and create an opportunity for you two to fight. To this end, I will eliminate all unfavorable factors. Your ability is destined to be the king among all the ability users. Our divine realm will also rise completely in this generation. Come out of the shadow of history. Be it Li Anping, Star Alliance, or the Amist Federation, Tyrael, and those demons. No one can stop our rise." At the same time, a special fighter was taking off from the east coastline of Daxia, flying towards the east of the sea. The two wings of the aircraft have folding propellers, which can hover freely in the air. The belly of the aircraft looks very large. It seems to be able to carry a lot of things. However, at this time, there were only 4 people on the fighter except the pilot. Li Enping was wearing a black combat uniform and sitting on a chair with his eyes closed. Opposite him were a cameraman and a photographer. In addition, there was a beautiful woman in a professional suit sitting in a seat, painting her face in front of the mirror. She was Lu Ruruo, who had interviewed Li Enping on TV some time ago. Because the previous news was so hot, Lu Ruruo, who interviewed Li Enping, also became popular. This time, she got the opportunity to follow the team to interview Li Enping again, and she couldn't wait. Looking at the deep V-neck she was wearing, it perfectly highlighted the advantages of her upper body. It seems that she has made up her mind to take this opportunity to add fuel to the fire. While putting on makeup, she looked at Li Enping, who was resting with his eyes closed, from time to time. It seems that she was afraid that Li Enping would find out, and she would look back every time. She was also very curious about this man who was now at the center of the public opinion storm. The other party has countless wealth, unattainable power, and unfathomable power. Either one is enough to attract girls of any age. Moreover, all these things are added together. It is impossible to say that Lu Ruruo has no thoughts about him. Unfortunately, every time she met Li Enping, he had nothing to say except work. He looked at her as if he was looking at a dead fish. Lu Ruruo even doubted her face and figure. A few minutes later, Lu Ruruo finally finished her makeup. Looking at her young and beautiful self in the mirror, she showed a charming smile. The cameraman and photographer beside her looked at her face and the unfathomable ravine in the collar below her face, and they felt dry in their mouths. Lu Ruruo pursed her lips, put down the foundation and the mirror, stood up, and suddenly walked towards Li Enping. But just as she showed a confident smile, before she took a few steps, the plane encountered a turbulence. Lu Ruruo was wearing high heels, and she couldn't stand steadily, and fell directly to the ground. Just as she screamed, a warm and strong arm hugged her up and helped her to the seat. Lu Ruruo looked at Li Enping embarrassedly and said, "Thank you." Li Enping replied, "No need. We'll be recording later, so you'd better not wear high heels on the plane." Yes, Lu Ruruo nodded and took off her high heels. A pair of white, tender, and delicate feet were exposed. She glanced at Li Enping and said, "General, are we really going to stop the tsunami this time? You'll know when we get there. Leave everything to me later, you stay on the plane and pay attention to filming." At this moment, Li Enping's communicator rang, and a voice came in. "Hello? Is Your Excellency here? This is Audrey. I'm here, how's the situation? I've arrived at the Sun Islands, and the tsunami just passed." Audrey was flying in the air, looking at the vast ocean under her feet, and hesitated. "If I'm not dazzled, then this place under my feet should still be an archipelago half an hour ago. Sir, this tsunami is more terrible than the Earthquake Bureau predicted. Did you record all the footage?" Yes, Audrey nodded and looked at the camera in her hand. In terms of displacement speed alone, Li Enping ranked first among the Daxia dragon birds, Emma ranked second, and Audrey, who could fly at subsonic speed for a long time, was obviously third. That's why she was sent to investigate the situation in advance. Fortunately, the Sun Islands have always been a territory that Daxia and Dongyang have been fighting for, so there is no one living there. So the loss from the tsunami is not great. After the call, Li Enping contacted Lu Sheng again. "What's the situation in Jinggang City?" Yajiao sighed, "We have broadcast the situation on TV, but the evacuation speed is still very slow. On the one hand, too many people want to leave, and on the other hand, some citizens don't want to leave at all, and we have to persuade them." Li Enping said coldly, "There is no time. The tsunami is faster than expected. Let somehow smash out a piece of land. Emma, just do it directly, and move as much as you can." Yajiao hesitated, "But if this is the case, I'm afraid it will arouse public resentment. There is no time to care about so much. If there is public resentment, there will be no more after we rescue them. Yajiro replied, I understand. Half an hour later, Sun Hao directly flattened a small hill with infinite mind energy. Then he walked to the next hill. In Jinggang City, above the crowd, a black portal with a radius of hundreds of meters suddenly appeared, and then fell down horizontally. Wherever it passed, all citizens, cars, and buildings disappeared. The next moment, when they came to their senses, they all appeared in the valley dozens of kilometers away. As soon as they appeared, they heard a loud earth-shaking sound, and the huge golden light column was slowly disappearing. Where the light column disappeared, the original hill had disappeared, leaving only a huge platform with a diameter of 500 meters. Unfortunately, although Jingguang's mind energy is infinite, his maximum output per second is limited. Otherwise, he can blast out a large enough platform in a blink of an eye. Even if the output of mind energy is infinite, he can stop the tsunami alone. Unfortunately, this is also impossible. Although Emma and Jingguang cooperated, the speed of evacuation was greatly accelerated. But compared with the hundreds of thousands of people in Jinggang City, this speed is still too slow. When Li Anping on the East China Sea opened the cabin door and looked at the tsunami flowing in the distance, only a quarter of the citizens of Jinggang City had left. The next moment, Li Anping fell from the cabin door and fell freely towards the sea. In front of him, several kilometers away, it was a tsunami that filled the entire field of vision, as high as dozens of stories. The merciless waves, with the momentum of covering the sky and swallowing the earth, rushed towards Li Anping, who was as tiny as dust in the air. To be continued, please search PI Ocean Literature. The novels are better and updated faster. Man at the Top of the Food Chain. Author, Xianglang Go. Chapter 200. Humans may be the most aggressive creatures on the entire planet. The entire history of mankind may be more like a history of the development of weapons. From swords in the past to guns and cannons today. Human beings have never stopped pursuing the power of weapons. But until today, when guns and cannons are prevalent and hot weapons dominate, some people have never forgotten their most primitive weapon and have never stopped pursuing this original weapon. That is, the human body. This weapon contains countless mysteries and has become the goal of countless people as the most primitive weapon of mankind. Running, swimming, boxing, weightlifting, diving, gymnastics, martial arts. Countless people bet their youth and dreams on their bodies. They work hard day after day, just hoping to polish their bodies to the limit. And today, a man whose body has reached the limit will challenge the power of nature with the power of his body, the most primitive weapon of mankind. Hello everyone, I'm Lururuo. We are now on the sea 20 kilometers east of the east coast. As you can see, a tsunami caused by an undersea earthquake is rushing towards Jinggang City on the East China Sea Peninsula at a speed of 800 kilometers per hour, or more than 200 meters per second. Although the Jinggang City government has organized the evacuation of citizens with the help of the central government, because the time is too short, there are still more than 300,000 citizens stranded in Jinggang City. Once the tsunami lands in Jinggang City, the casualties caused are unimaginable. And now, the leader of the Central Special Service Team, General Li Anping, is trying to stop the tsunami with his own ability and his own strength. After Lururuo finished speaking, the cameraman put down the camera and said, "Not bad, it's passed once." Yeah, Lururuo nodded. Putting down the microphone in his hand, he looked outside the cabin again. The tsunami several kilometers away was as high as more than 20 floors. Although Lururuo and his party were on the plane, they still couldn't help but turn pale when they saw the tsunami in front of them. This is the instinctive awe of heaven and earth as an ordinary person. The pilot at the front of the cabin shouted at this time, "It's still a bit dangerous here. I want to fly higher, step back, is your lens okay?" "No problem," the photographer replied. Then the fighter plane began to gradually rise in a hovering manner, and then retreated, slowly moving away from Li Enping's position. As the altitude continued to rise, the cameraman felt more secure. Then they took out the specially prepared lens and pointed it at Li Enping, who was standing on the sea level more than 1,000 meters away. Lu Ruruo asked, "Is it okay?" "No problem, the lens can see clearly, just wait for post-production." Because it was uncertain whether Li Enping could stop the tsunami, this recording was not live. He seems to be standing on the water. Maybe it's some kind of superpower. On the other side, Li Enping was focused at this moment. Relying on the relationship of the void force field, his feet were standing on the water at this time, and his body rose and fell with the waves. His eyes were calm, as if the natural disasters several kilometers away were not taken seriously by him at all. Seeing the tsunami getting closer and closer, Li Enping exhaled deeply, and a white mist-like gas slowly emerged with his breathing. It seemed that even the distracting thoughts in his heart were exhaled with this breath. Then Li Enping's body slowly expanded at a speed visible to the naked eye. The purpose of this time was to stop the natural disaster, but Li Enping was not given the opportunity to try many times. So he chose to use all his strength right from the start and directly turned on the explosive state. The body expanded rapidly. In a blink of an eye, Li Enping had turned into a 2.5 meter tall little giant. The black tight combat suit also expanded, wrapping Li Enping's body tightly. In the next breath, the tsunami was already 300 meters in front of Li Enping. The huge waves seemed to cover the entire sky, leaving Li Enping with only endless shadows. The next second, the time belonging to ordinary people continued, while the time belonging to Li Enping began to be infinitely stretched. The first footstep towards the sea. Li Enping had instantly appeared in front of the waves more than 20 stories high. Under the tearing of the air, the combat uniform on his upper body has been completely shattered. 1 second later, the sea surface where he was standing will be sunken more than 10 meters under the reaction force, forming a bowl shape. But now, in this moment when time is infinitely stretched, the water surface only stirs up a ripple. The waves are suspended in the air, the plane is still, and Lu Ruruo's eyes are still fixed on Li Enping's original position. Everything has entered slow motion, and the only thing that remains unchanged is Li Enping. His speed still looks fast at this time. He is like the god of gods and the king of kings, standing proudly in the sky, with his right hand clenched into a fist, 5 fingers together, and collected at the waist, as if holding the most terrible and destructive power in the world in his palm. Then it is a simple straight punch, with the most primitive and naked violence, savagely blasting towards the nearby waves. After the fist hits the air and the waves, the void force field immediately takes effect. A force of over tens of millions of tons pressed down on the air and was evenly distributed on the sea water in front of him, pushing the entire sea backwards. It was as if there was an invisible giant hand hundreds of meters long and wide pushing, and the first wave of the tsunami was pushed back mercilessly by this force. But even with Li Enping's domineering power, this punch was enough to break the wave in front of him and the sea water flowed back. But his range of action was only less than 1 kilometer. And the coastline of Jinggang City is hundreds of kilometers. For others, stopping the tsunami has become an impossible task. But for Li Enping, the facts in front of him are simple. If one punch is not enough, just punch again. With a terrifying body and terrifying speed, Li Enping disappeared and appeared, standing on another wave 1 kilometer away. So, another earth-shaking punch hit the wave. Then it disappeared and appeared again. When the first rumble sound came into the ears of Lu Ruruo and others, they had already lost Li Enping's figure in their eyes. But the traces left by this punch told everyone Li Enping's existence very clearly. More than 20-story waves were dispersed, and under the pressure of the terrifying fist force, the sea water flowed in the opposite direction as if pushed by an invisible giant palm, flowing back hundreds of kilometers. The rumbling sound was not just one, but as dense as the missiles dropped by the bomber. Amid the loud noises, Lururuo just watched the tsunami in front of her, quickly dissipating to both sides with the position they were facing as the center. The tsunami was disappearing, and the seawater was flowing back. At this moment, no one was talking, and they were all taken away by the scene in front of them. In the history of mankind, there has never been a moment, and no one, who has interpreted the 4 words turning the rivers and seas upside down so vividly. At this time, Li Anping's body has become the strongest weapon in history. From ancient times to the present, no one on this planet can surpass him in the development of the body. Lururuo's eyes widened and her mouth opened slightly. In her mind, the image of Li Anping standing on the water before kept appearing, and it was constantly intertwined with the scene in front of her. A word, a sentence, kept lingering in her mind. God, if there really is a God in the world, maybe the one in front of her is him.